I had a saying from one of a DB coach when I was with the Eagles. He's like, you point the finger, pull the thumb. And it's one of those things to where we tend to be so judgmental, and we have to take a step back and to reassess our own selves and to be accountable within that nature. I think we constantly blur the line of sympathy and empathy. That's a situation to where I think we need to be more empathetic of what's going on out here, and have a different understanding of the different environment that people are coming from.
Welcome to another episode of the Hey Where'd You Go podcast. I'm your host, Collin Kushner. Joining me now is former NFL safety and Super Bowl champ, Walter Thurmond. With all my guests, I always like to start from the very beginning and kind of weave our way to where we are now. So you're a Southern California guy. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Grew up in the West Los Angeles area. The Culver City, and lived some time in Inglewood as well. LA was an interesting time growing up, going through middle school. Got into a situation of just hanging with the rough crowd, and got into some trouble there. And I ended up moving to West Covina, like my eighth grade year, right before high school, and just took a different path and took some ownership from some actions that I got into during that time, and I made the best of that opportunity of being in a new environment, and set my sights on being able to be a better person, and just trying to follow some of my passions that I had for myself.
You said you got involved with the wrong crowd. How did you get out of that?
My mom made the decision to make the move out to West Covina there, to stay with my grandma during that time. It was, again, life's about living and learning and being accountable for your actions. And that was a time in my life to where it was, taking ownership for those situations, and being able to not let it define me, and being able to move forward, and, just being able to progress and just find different interests and hobbies. And at that point of being out in the West Covina area, I was able to be friends with a bunch of different group of individuals out there, and so it was needed during that time. Could have easily took a different trajectory of life, having stayed. I guess it's really hard to tell, because it's just how things kind of just play out, and maybe I could have been influenced in a different type of way and manner, also being down in the Los Angeles area.
How important is it to take ownership and then to continue moving forward? Because I think both of those go hand in hand.
Almost definitely go hand in hand. And I think we're kind of in with everything that's kind of going on in our society right now. Everyone wants transparency. Everybody's looking for accountability, especially if you're in the public eye. And I think people are looking to hold individuals that have some kind of status or on the TV in some kind of capacity, in public figure, to be accountable. But I think the biggest thing is that individuals need to be accountable as well. It's not just a one-way street. I had a saying from one of a DB coach when I was with the Eagles. He's like, you point the finger, pull the thumb. And it's one of those things to where we tend to be so judgmental, and we have to take a step back and to reassess our own selves and to be accountable within that nature.
I love that saying. You said what? Pull the
point. If you point the finger,
pull the thumb.
Pull the thumb. Yeah, you pull the thumb right back at yourself. So again, it goes back. If you make a judgment, you have to judge yourself as well. And so again, it goes back to not having any judgment and being able to accept people for who they are and their actions. And I think we constantly blur the line of sympathy and empathy. Right. And I think, that's a situation to where I think we need to be more empathetic of what's going on out here, and have a different understanding of the different environment that people are coming from.
I'm totally with you on that. Well said. Well said by your DB's coach in Philadelphia as well. I mean, that is eloquently put, in something that we could all learn at a much younger age, because I don't think I ever got to that point until I got older. As you get older, you accrue new experiences and you meet different people. And of course, that changes you along the way. I guess that's the beauty of growing up, right?
Yeah, and life is about experience, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and so again, you're a product of your environment, of what you're constantly being around, from your household, from your neighborhood, from the community and city that you're living in, even by your state, right? Because each state has their own governing laws within that, and so it's one of those things to where the more you're being exposed to different things and being open-minded, I think is the biggest thing, because we get so caught up in kind of having that, cognitive dissonance of, not wanting to accept other people's, viewpoints. And it's not, I don't think it's a matter of, I think it's a matter of hearing it out of what people are coming from and being able to best assess it, how it based off of your life and your values that you have for yourself. And I think values are becoming lost as we continue to progress forward in life. And I think we have to get back to some of those fundamental situations.
You're absolutely right. Can you hear somebody else out in their opinion and their prerogative? Because you may not agree with it, but can you at least listen, put your stuff to the side? And that's something actually I've been personally working on. And it's quite beautiful when you can get to a space and you can listen and you can just turn off your opinion, just hear them out in kind of an impartial, unbiased arena. It really is a beautiful thing.
You can't listen and speak at the same time. And I think that's where I think people are so quick to have a response before someone even finished their thought or finished their question. They're already answering the question before the question's even complete. And so I think it's, if you take that step back and you take that moment to listen, it's like, oh, wait, you know what? Hey, we're actually in the same path here. And I was about to go a totally different direction and be against you. But as it came out, it's like, oh, we actually have the same ideology on, said topic, whatever that may be.
That's why I love being a journalist, because it forces me to work on the art of listening, and obviously listening to my guests like yourself, and then pausing as opposed to just jumping over you and moving on to the next topic.
And I think that's what I love so much about football. Again, you have 100 guys that are from all over the country. They kind of set your locker up with somebody that's not from your region or area. And you're spending all this time with this individual, and you're out working hard each and every day. You're sweating, you're in pain, and you have a moment to be able to talk and get to know somebody, that you probably may have never even decided to talk to. And, this is a guy that you're going through it day in and day out. And it's a sports as a common ground in some situations is beautiful. And I think even in the workplace, you kind of have that situation, but I think it's so much work. You find your little groups that people hang out with, and, everyone's just kind of trying to get in and get out. And, there may not be a lot of passion depending on the work that you're doing, because you're just doing it for work and you're just trying to get your paycheck, and you're kind of going on with that space. And I think with football, or things that you're with a group of guys or a group of girls, or whatever the situation may be that you're passionate about, and you have a bunch of people that are passionate about the same thing, and I think it just breeds a different type of interaction.
I love that connectivity point that you probably, again, you can get it in the workplace if you take the time to chat with the person to your left or to your right, or, since we're remote, maybe hop on the Zoom meeting a little bit earlier, longer to get to know them. But I never really thought about that from the professional football perspective, where you're being placed next to somebody that's probably has a different upbringing than you, different part of the country. And you get to take the time, if you choose, to listen and to learn and to hear about their life and where they're from.
I'm a city boy, and I'm, next to an offensive lineman who's from the Midwest, and he, grew up on a farm, and I'm getting to know, like, hey, what certifies as being Angus beef, and like, how much cattle is going for. And it's a perspective that, I've never been accustomed to or never had the experience of. I mean, obviously being in the city, and, here's this moment of having this interaction and getting to hear this individual and where they're coming from, and, their way of life. And he's like, oh yeah, I just bought 80 acres, 100 acres over here. And I'm like, oh, what? It's like, it's just a different perspective. It's like, I just got a house over here, and it's on, 8,000 square feet. It's all perspective.
You're like, now I'm in Los Angeles. I bought myself a really nice, 1,300 square foot condo.
Right.
They're talking about the acreage. What you just said, I kind of attribute that to curiosity. How important is it for people to be curious?
I don't think we do enough of it. I think we kind of been taught as well to not be curious, in some aspects, or wanting to learn and be to progress ourselves in that capacity. And I've just kind of, for me as an individual, have constantly wanting to learn and sought out that experience and wanting to listen and hear. For the longest majority part of my life, I was very quiet, always just kind of an observer, and just took a lot of things in. And I think that allowed me to, be open to other people's experience and their upbringing. And I'm constantly wanting to learn, because these are experiences, things that I don't know, and I want to have more tools in a tool belt, if you can say.
There are multiple ways you can go. You can either accrue experiences the way that you've been doing it, or you can have somebody just say, oh, like, they can just kind of lay it all out for you. And I think that's the more traditional approach. I like the approach you're taking, where you kind of, maybe your parents tell you about certain things, or they give you their viewpoint, but then you go out on your own and you really explore for yourself, like, what resonates with you and what doesn't.
There's another saying from same coach again, having a white belt mentality, is your white belt in karate is like your beginning stage. But if you take this perspective and this approach to constantly learn, because you don't have that understanding, I think it sets you up to be more successful. And then I think it sets you up from a human aspect of just being more understanding, because again, we don't know everything. You're a liar if you say you do know everything, and that's the false assumption of a situation, because there's always an experience, there's always something to be learned. And I think that's the approach that we have to take. And I think that's where, on the political aspect, things get tough, because it's so divided. And when you take a step back and you look at the whole spectrum of space, both sides are actually saying the same thing, but it's just because of, the aspect of not wanting to hear, and not be able to take that approach to be able to listen, things get convoluted.
As you're going on this journey of learning, growing up, you moved from LA, you moved to West Covina. When did football factor into your life? Was that something that you grew up playing in LA and then transitioned in West Covina, or you hadn't touched the sport until you moved to the West Co area?
I grew up playing baseball, some soccer and a little basketball. I didn't play football until my 8th grade year. We were living out in actually the North Valley there, because the family house got burnt down through electrical fire. And so we were kind of relocated. And that was my first year playing football. South Valley Panthers. We were terrible. But
that's how it always starts, though, dude.
Yeah. And so it was, it was a fun experience. It was the first time that, being able to play, a physical sport in that capacity. My mom was always scared that my brother and I would get hurt. And then fast forward, I have, a handful of injuries later through the end of my college career and professional. But I think that's just the nature of the beast there. And then once I got to West Covina, dove into playing football, basketball. I stopped playing baseball and gravitated towards track, just wanting to get faster, have a different experience and things of that nature. So that's kind of how it just took off from there. And then just had great coaching, in all three of those sports that have been very impactful and fundamental to, I guess, my growth and development through the course of my life in that situation as well. So again, there's a lot to learn from football, but it's a lot more to be learned from the coaching staff, because I think coaches have more responsibility than just teach us X's and O's. And this is where my DB coach in college, his approach was, his job was to create, help build young men for life and to be upstanding men of society, as opposed to just football players. And so again, we had a very cerebral DB group in there. You can play with TJ Ward, Jairus Byrd, Patrick Chung, guys who played 6+ years, some of those guys even 10, and a handful of Super Bowls in there as well. And, he wasn't really teaching X's and O's too much. We were watching game tape, and everything else was kind of, just real life stuff. And he figured that the guys that were going to take the initiative to learn the playbook outside of the classroom, and those are the guys that are going to be able to play. And sure enough, that was kind of his approach, and that was just the mentality. And sure enough, we had a bunch of guys that went off and had successful careers in the NFL.
How do you get players, and especially now with, looking back on your career, how do you get players to understand that it's more than X's and O's, and it's more about life and accruing, again, experiences and life experiences to help you out as you walk through it?
I think the generations that are coming up now are getting a better insight of that. I think my group and generation were a little bit on the cusp of that, to where it was starting to transition over to be more cerebral and understanding there's a life after football. And I think that's a testament to the older guys who have come before, giving back and giving that knowledge and giving that insight of, trying to be smarter with your money, understand your life experience on what to expect. Because the whole aspect of once you get into the professional space, it's not real life. And so I think that's where I think a lot of fans have trouble seeing in some aspects, and being how guys need to be accountable. But, the things that are coming at these individuals, men and women that are professional athletes, that it's, there's people that have ill intent that are coming after us. And there's people that are wholehearted, and they're genuine in their approach and genuine in wanting to be able to help and give back. And, when you're in your early 20s and, very, not much life experience, right? Because you just spent all your time at this, at this university or college that's usually in a small town. And, and again, and you're probably coming from a small town, and even coming from the city, you almost, you forget that previous aspect, because now you're in a different environment. And so it's there's a lot to take in from those experiences when you're transitioning to that professional space.
I just think it's so difficult to decipher between the two, because you are very young. And if you don't have family mentors or coaching staff that are preparing you for those extraneous situations that could pop up, like I have no clue, like how, as an 18-year-old, you're deciphering between like what's maybe a good situation and what's something that maybe isn't conducive to learning and to growth.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of athletes that are going into college, I think, come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So then you have that aspect coming to the fold as well, to where you had a different outlook and different environment. And like you said, it can be tough to decipher, what's right, what's wrong. And I mean, obviously you're like, oh, we should know what's right or what's wrong, right? I mean, but then again, it's like the person who's poor and living on the street, that's been growing up that way, and all they don't have any food, and they steal something, to eat. There's that, that ethical question of like, was that a wrong for situation because he's for survival? Or, obviously the stealing component is there's wrong in that. But then, it proposes interesting questions for sure.
Yeah, I think like a lot has to do with your environment, just like the question you just proposed. Because if you grew up maybe and you didn't have a great childhood, maybe your parents weren't really existent, and you didn't have any mentors or anything, and then you have recruiters and coaches coming at you, and maybe other people on the side dangling money or saying, hey, you come here, you'll have X, Y, and Z, maybe things that you haven't had, throughout your life. Like, how do you turn away from that? And how do you even know what's right and what's wrong? I mean, you really don't.
Again, it goes back to just the experience. And, when you make a wrong choice, it's being able to learn from that choice and being able to move forward and not constantly repeating those same habits.
I'm with that 100%. At what point did you know that you had a shot to play football in college and then obviously go on to play in the NFL? Was that something that you realized early on in high school?
I would probably say after my sophomore year, going into my junior year, just because you started getting some of the letters and schools showing interest in you, which, they're just sending it letters and showing interest, as you look back at it now, there's no scholarships attached to it. But at that point, it was like, I have an opportunity to probably get my school paid for, and education was always something that was, was important. And for me during this time, I didn't see myself per se, I'm going to go to NFL. Like in high school, I was like, I'm going to go to college and, maybe I will still be a part of sports and do an athletic training, do kinesiology for my degree and things of that nature, which Oregon didn't have a kinesiology program there. They have a graduate program. And so again, it was kind of progressional for me. Even when I got to college, I think it was after my sophomore season, I'm seeing guys that are in my class that are, getting looked at in the NFL, getting drafted, making teams. And I'm like, you know what? Let me see how far I can take this. Because it was close. It was tangible. Because I'm seeing guys that I'm playing with, practicing with every single day, and they're getting opportunities to be out there. I'm like, maybe I can, make it to that next level. And so at those moments, the group of us, especially in that DB room, decided to, just kind of, the wheels just clicked and turned, and let's just really started training in different capacity to prepare ourselves for the next level.
What an exciting time, especially when it's not, when it's on the table, you're like, great, like if I can go ahead and achieve this, awesome. But it also seems like you had your eyes set on things away from football as well, where it's like, hey, if this works, great. If not, there are plenty of other interests and things that I would love to do.
For me, I have a lot of passions, I guess you can say, and I guess dreams in that regard. So it allowed me to be open for that. And I think what's tough with a lot of professional athletes, as you see post career, is that identity issue, because that was the pinnacle, that was their dream, of pursuit of playing at the highest level, and has become almost an identity to them. And being able to figure out what they're going to do afterwards is a struggle, and it's tough in a lot of cases. And so I think I've always allowed myself to be open-minded to the situation, that, the sport was going to have a shelf life. And I think when I tore my knee my senior year in college, I tore my ACL, MCL, PCL, the fourth game of the year. And, that allowed me to take a step back and like, okay, my mindset was still, I'm going to go get drafted, just because of the body of work that I put together in the 4 years that I was in college there. But it was also, let me figure out, what am I passionate about and what I want to do once this is all over. Because then you start looking at the statistics. The average career is less than 3 years. And, that's not a long time, that's mid-20s, and, in a lot of cases, depending on when you're coming out of school. And so, that's where I started diving into interest in the film industry, and wanting to learn the industry and from A to Z essentially, and kind of been self-taught and continued to progress through the course of my early career there. And I've always been a fan of technology as well. So I think that's what was a huge foundation for me, I guess, going from high school when I moved out to West Covina and progressing on, was, having these foundations in the background outside the sport that kind of kept me, level-headed in a lot of cases.
It seems like you kind of skipped that identity crisis that so many top-notch athletes go through, and some guests that I've had previously on the podcast, went through that crisis, so to speak. And it wasn't, when we kind of dove into it, like, it wasn't a pretty road. I mean, it almost like blocked out the fact that they spent 10 years in the NHL or NBA or NFL, and it just became this like really dark place. And it's almost like, I don't know, it was scary just to hear it.
Even with my, my mental approach to the situation, I encountered something similar to when I retired. I retired, I guess, in the prime of my career in a lot of respects at, 28 there. And for me, I already knew what I was doing. At this point, I have executive produced a handful of documentaries and feature films. I have patents in technology going into which would have been my 7th year. And, I've accomplished things off the field, and I wanted to pursue these things. And the biggest challenge for me was family and friends vicariously living through me and living through my experience of wanting me to continue to play, and disregarding almost the residual effects of the sport on my body, on my mind, and things of that nature. And that was tough, because I am looking to pursue this film project that I wanted to be more hands-on with, producing and directing, and even developing this technology that I have patents for. And, everyone's looking at me like, why are you quitting? Why are you have so much time? But they could not see the other things that I had accomplished and were doing and wanted to do. They just seen football. And for me, it was tough, because there was, I don't know, the lack of support in a weird way. of, doing something I'm passionate, doing something I care about. And it was, a, a, a lot of forceful type of situations for me to go continue to play a sport that, again, had, physically took a lot from me. I mean, I played 6 years, but 3 of those years where I was injured reserve. And so, it's again, like, people are seeing that, but people aren't really seeing that. Then people don't understand the mental rigors of an injured athlete and how much time it takes to get back healthy, get back right, and then be able to get back to that top-notch, professional athlete, caliber. And, you're actually working harder than it would be if you were healthy. And a lot of people don't realize that. And especially depending on the nature of your injury, to where, again, you have an ACL, again, you're on the shelf for 9 months, just being able to get your leg and body to get the atrophy back within the muscle there. And then you're actually having to go physically now train to be an elite athlete. And so, it wears on you, especially if you're going, for me, it was like almost every other year. And it wasn't like all my injuries happened to be in the course of action. It wasn't like it was a freak accident here and there. It was, a pile landed on my leg. I break my leg. I'm going for a strip, and, I tear the tendon off the bone there. And even when I tore my ACL in college, it was a straight hit to the knee that just, blew up. And so it was, it's just been very interesting of the course of a trajectory of my career along with injuries. But, just that wear and tear of having to rehab, through the course of the year and being able to get back, it takes its toll.
From a psychological perspective, why do you think it's so difficult for friends or family or just fans in general to not be okay with you leaving the game behind for these really epic, other ventures, whether it's producing films or, with your patented technology? I mean, to me, the other things that you've done outside of football are amazing and quite fascinating. And I've always been interested in, like, why do people have such a hard time letting go of this game, that, again, like, you got hurt, man, like, and you have to rehab.
Yeah. And I mean, even for some of the players, players will go get cut and still constantly work out for years on end, waiting for that opportunity to get back into the NFL or get back into their sport. Because, again, there's a lore within that realm of place. And again, it's not real life. It's almost a fantasy in a lot of respects. And I think that's where, friends and family, how society views professional athletes, it's celebrities. We put them on a pedestal because they're on a TV screen. And we have this fascination with the TV screen that, anything that comes through the box, it's the truth. And, they're bigger than life, when in reality, everyone's just people. They remove their bowels the same way and eat in the same way as you do, and so it's like, the obviously that there's an aspect of the monetary, and you can go out there and have, different experiences, but, that's the separating aspect of that. And I think the friends and family being pulled into that realm for a moment or instance in whatever type of capacity, it's a big thing, or it's like, oh, I know somebody that's in there, that's out there, it's the living vicariously through the individuals. And so I think that's what's tough, because it's like, okay, they can almost see the view as a situation of being selfish too. It's like, you're taking this away from us too. And it's like, it was like, but your body's not on the line though. And I think it's tough. And I think it's just a framework in how we view these individuals that are here to entertain us, in quotes.
That's the thing that I hope changes over the course of time, is that whether you're a fan or whatever, a family member of a professional athlete, that you could always pull it back and remember, like, they have thoughts and feelings too. They put their pants on just like we do. They go to they go to the restroom, and it's not, they're on TV and they're elite at what they do. But at the end of the day, we're people.
When you look at professional sports, it's in a frame of business. The athlete or actress or actor, they're a commodity essentially. And I think that's where it gets tough, because in most commodities like this, like this cup here, or, this phone, they don't have feelings. They don't talk back. They just, they get used and abused, and, you go buy another one. And I think with professional sports, with the athlete kind of being that commodity, is what's being sold to the masses, what's being sold to TV. I don't know. There's a psychological aspect there that's, it's like, oh, well, you're making all this money. Why are you complaining about being out there? Well, it's like, we spend a lot of money to make a car. You spend a lot of money to make whatever good or service, and so, it's an interesting space of where we are at to. And I think we have taken for granted the individuals that are playing these sports or entertaining us on the TV screen or in the movie theaters, of not allowing them to be human, and taking that away from them. And it's an unfortunate type of situation, and it's I don't know, it says a lot.
It's well said. I mean, it's dehumanizing, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, and I can only imagine what it's like to be on the other side of that, to be the professional athlete, and to be viewed as if you're not human, like you said, like a commodity, like a cup or a phone, and you're just interchangeable.
Yeah, and ironically enough, with the NFL, it's a young man's league, so it's only 3 years. So like, you get in, and we don't want to pay the veteran because he's slowing down a little bit, even though he's smart. But you know what? I can get this younger guy for the minimum, and he can do the exact same job as the veteran. And so again, it does get cycled out constantly, looking for the the new model of the iPhone. You're the iPhone 7. We need the 13 now. Sorry, buddy.
It's true.
Yeah, you just don't have the camera features, and we need the camera features now. And so it's very interesting on how we view things here. And I think with professional sports, it just kind of it has blown up to the level that it is. And there's a lot of great things that come from sports in general. And I think it also helps with the morale of individuals, and the downtimes of the economic situations, or even where people's socioeconomic backgrounds are. And so it serves a purpose. But I think for the betterment of our country, there needs to be much more. And I think we need to reevaluate how we view these situations, and we need to just have a better use of critical thinking.
I completely agree. I like to say that we should all view sport through the lens of how you viewed it as a child. As a child, for me, growing up playing ice hockey, that was my time. That was my sanctuary. That was my place where it didn't matter what was going on, in the outside world. It was like I was focused in as soon as I hit the ice, and everything around me went black, and it's just me and the game in front of me. And that was it. All my worries went away. And I know that's like a very childlike perspective, but I think I think it's a great foundation of how we view sport, instead of dehumanizing and looking at you as like a commodity. And nope, you're the iPhone 7. Now we want the iPhone 24.
Yeah. It's just an ongoing type of situation.
You had a fantastic career at Oregon. You were a dual sport athlete, football and track and field. And then you went on to get drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in the 4th round in the 2010 NFL draft. When you got drafted, can you kind of walk us through like the thoughts, feelings, and emotions on that particular day and moment in time?
Yeah, I guess leading up, again, like I said, I tore my ACL, MCL, PCL. I had high hopes of, being drafted high, especially with the season that I was having at that point. And, things didn't go that way. Going on that third day, on that Saturday, got a call 7:00 in the morning. And, it's a Seattle number. And, Pete Carroll Hobbs, me and Pete, we had an interesting career from college at USC, Oregon, being an LA guy, wanted to go to SC, wasn't big enough, didn't pass the eye test for one of the recruiters that came down there. They gave scholarships to like 2 of the top 10 corners in the nation, no big deal. And, so every time I play SC, I would come after him. And so we kind of had like this understanding. And the first thing he says, like he gets on the phone, he's like, there's no more Ducks and there's no more Trojans. It's just Seahawks. And so, I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. We're Seahawks here. And so, it was a great experience. It was a great organization. I think for me, being able to progress my game, I wanted to have a more solid press technique, I guess a different type of technique in the press coverage. And Pete is very famous for, his, old school way of press technique, which I love, the step kick approach, which allows you to be very physical at the line of scrimmage. And so I think, the things that I wanted to better myself for my personal career, I was able to get that in Seattle, being able to be drafted, along with, Earl and Okun and Tate and Cam and, all these different guys that were part of that draft class, and, being able to redefine, that team and going into the, the year of the Super Bowl there and win the Super Bowl for Seattle. Then that was just a great experience. And, everything happens for a reason. And it would be one of those things to where even if I went earlier, maybe didn't have the opportunity to make the playoffs or even have the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And so, can't always dwell on things that the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And I've always been fortunate enough and thankful for the knee injury, because it sounds so odd. It's like, oh, how are you thankful for, destroying your knee and costing you, draft, rounds in the draft there. But for me, it was, it allowed me to put things in perspective on life, like we talked about earlier, and being able to get back grounded and have a different foundation of, what I want to do outside of life. And again, the experience there in Seattle, and a lot of the 12th man is the 12th man. The fan base is, is pretty insane there. And so it was a great time and great experience that I had when I was playing in Seattle, and just being able to go on from there and going to the East Coast, playing with the Giants and then playing with the Eagles there, finishing the career out. And, I can't, everyone asked me, like, oh, what was the best city? And all the cities had something unique about them that I just love so much. And it was just great time, great opportunity, and ultimately just a great experience. And I just learned a lot within the 6 years of playing in the NFL.
During your time with Seattle, you were part of the Legion of Boom: Brandon Browner, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Byron Maxwell. What made the Legion of Boom so successful? And were you able to take away anything from playing with those guys into your post-football life?
It was all about a mindset. You had a bunch of guys that had a chip on their shoulder, that had something to prove in some capacity. And there was just a level of accountability that was in that room that was, that I hadn't seen since my time at college with playing with, the group of guys that I mentioned earlier. And so it was very comfortable. And it was, if somebody went out there and made a play, you wanted to go make a play. If you didn't have good technique or you missed a tackle, you wanted to go back out there to make up for that situation. And so I think just the high IQ, the high understanding, obviously the physicality with, Cam back there and, Brandon and Sherm, and even, Earl, the Mighty Mouse back there, and just, hitting everything that walked, and he's flying around 110 miles an hour. And, just the level of play was just elevated because of you wanted to make the next play if someone else made the play. And it wasn't a envious or a jealous type of situation. It was a genuine, he's doing his part. Let me step up to do my part as well. And, that's a very rare thing that a group of guys, can have that type of situation in one position, which kind of trickled down and bled to, linebacker group, which, it came down to the defensive line group, which the defensive line group, they were like the older veterans, of the whole unit. And, and we were kind of caught between, and we had a very young linebacker group too during that time. And so it was just, it was just this mentality that the whole defense had of, why do they have to score points? No one says they have to score points. And so like when you start thinking in this capacity and having this belief in yourself, and you actually absolutely believe in the next guy that he's going to do his job, and everyone is communicating everything that's going on, you have an outcome like the Super Bowl. And, and that was really, the game was won, through the course of that year, but the game was won the week prior because we were just so dialed in on the play concepts and the routes, the checks and audibles. We were in tune to all those different things, the week prior before the Super Bowl even happened. And as the Super Bowl came about, it just kind of just fell in our hands. And, Earl and Cam played a great game of disguising our coverage, against Payne there. And, we ran cover 3 the majority of all our snaps. We weren't changing what we were doing, but, he thought we were playing quarters out there. And that, that threw his whole thing off because he was overthinking it now. He's playing a chess game with us and he's looking at our thing and, guys aren't moving how they're supposed to move. And they're just standing there flat-footed. And, he just couldn't grasp, what was going on out there, it seemed like.
You obviously had a fantastic football career. Oregon, you played 6 years in the NFL, like you said. Of course, you dealt with a lot of injuries along the way. You ended up winning a Super Bowl, taking down Peyton Manning and the Broncos. When you look back on your football career, how important have those lessons been and how instrumental have they been kind of as you've moved forward and into the really exciting portion I'm really excited to dive into?
They're very fundamental. There was a great saying, a great concept that I think helped us as well as a mentality standpoint for a lot of the DBs there. And it was brought about by Roy Lewis, who's a cornerback, played with the Pittsburgh Steelers and was out in Seattle as well. UW alum, which I won't hold that against him.
Yeah, I was going to
say. It was a concept in training. It was called, get more. And, get more was a concept of, if we had a set of, call it 10 on a bench, and he would say, get more, you'll pop out, 2 or 3 more. If we're running sprints and, we only had 6, he'll say, get more, we'll run another 6. And so it was this concept of, getting to how I took it was, the further you go within this kind of concept, it's, you get to your limit and get to your boundary. And then even though you're tired, you're fatigued and you can't go anymore, you push through that because you constantly have more in the tank than you think. I think we're human beings. We limit ourselves because of, our mental capacity. And when you unlock your mental capacity to endure that pain, to endure the tough aspects of life and, persevere and push through that, you can surprise yourself and how successful that you can be. And I think we see glimpses of it in the business aspect of individuals who create innovative technologies, who create, different types of, dynasties and industries in different spaces there to, what does it take to be able to achieve some of these things? And I think being able to learn, that concept and being able to apply it, not just from a work standpoint, but even just as being a better person, from your, philosophical or religious, spiritual backgrounds as well. How can I do more? How can I get more out of something? Out of myself in life? And I think there's always something higher that we can reach and strive to. And it's never limiting ourselves. It's always understanding that, hey, I can learn from everybody. Like literally everybody that I come in, for me personally, everyone that I come in contact with, no matter how old, how young, their background, I'm learning from them in some capacity. Because again, I don't have that experience. I may not have that experience. And I think the more we're able to be open and understanding and take the things that we didn't know that is positive for us, I think the better we're off as human beings.
I love that. Get more. I mean, it can be applied, like you said, in so many different, facets of your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And this is the really exciting part. Of course, the NFL career is something that I know people are going to enjoy, kind of getting that behind the scenes look. But once you left the game, I mean, Walter, I think in some ways you've been busier. You're a philanthropist, a patented technology inventor, a filmmaker. You have United Champions of Change, which is dedicated to providing educational resources, programming, mentorship, and sports training to underserved communities around the world. I don't even know where to start, but how exciting have these post-football ventures been for you?
They've been great, and it's being an entrepreneur. It's always a tough situation. It's being able to establish and build teams. And for me personally, how I got into these particular different type of spaces, obviously, stemmed from my passion, but it also stemmed from my purpose in life. And it's something that I've been combing through and figuring out through the course, over the course of these decades of, what's my purpose and what's my mission here? Because I think everyone has a purpose, and I think everyone has a set of passions and things that they're good and great at. And I think it's just a matter of figuring out and finding those situations. And for me, I've been able to dwindle it down to, help create and inspire change, change that lasts forever. And I think when we take a step back and look at our societal construct and seeing the things that are negative within it, it's, there's a lot of change that need to happen. And I think there's a lot of growth from individuals aspect that needs to happen. And I think for me, it's being able to create a cohesive ecosystem of things that I'm passionate about from a business standpoint, from the technology, from the entertainment side of things, but then also weaving in that aspect of philanthropy and being able to utilize the various resources, being able to utilize some of the connections and experiences that I've been blessed to have through the course of playing professional sports, and being able to use all those things to be able to help assist and create that future change. And so, being able to take a lot of this time, especially in the philanthropic space, and understanding from my perspective of growing up, I guess how important it was for, whether it was coaches, whether it was, older peers, and how influential those individuals were for me, for my development and my overall growth. And it's understanding that, everyone that doesn't have, positive role models because of, again, we're going back to our, our experiences and things of that nature. And so it's being able to connect with like-minded individuals to be able to share their experiences with individuals who may not have those experiences. And so I think it's much more than just a socioeconomic aspect. Again, we've been talking about, the constant pursuit of growth, the constant pursuit of learning, the constant understanding. And so it's not just meant for just the younger individuals, even though like they are the future of our future societal construct of things. But I think from an adult and older, aspect, I think we're still constantly able to learn and to be able to grow, to become better. I think that's where we're at right now in our society with all the things that are kind of going on. Everyone's asking and calling for it, from different individuals, but now it's, as an individual, we have to take ownership of that. And I think that's the biggest thing that's lacking is, the billions of people that live in this world need to take ownership of their actions and need to be accountable for those actions. Just as much as we want to point fingers at whatever that person is that's on TV and to hold them accountable, we need to hold ourselves accountable. Again, point the finger, pull the thumb.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That was no, but it's the truth. And I think excuse me, it starts with looking inward too. Yeah. I mean, again, going back to point the finger, pull the thumb. It goes back to, we talked about, it starts inward, and that's where the change and the growth begins. Period. I mean,
yeah, and that was that Seattle Seahawks team there. It was a bunch of guys that weren't pointing fingers. They were just pulling the thumbs. What can I do to not be a liability? What can I do to help progress this team forward? And I think that was from the players to the coaching staff, all the way from the top to the owner to all the way to down to the janitor, and I think everyone kind of had that mentality of, what am I going to do my part? And, here's a small snippet of a business organization of individuals doing it. Now, how would that look if, our whole country did it, the whole world did it in that aspect, in that situation, right? Again, being able to be accountable, being able to maximize their potential, it's something that we haven't seen in history. So it'd be exciting to see.
Maybe that'll happen, because I've actually thought about it sometimes. If I'm taking like a walk here in the Santa Monica area, I'll actually think like, what happens if everyone was accountable? What happens if everyone did the right thing? Like, what would this world look like? And I mean, it's, of course, like, I don't want to go like too down the weeds, but it's just like, yeah, it would be pretty amazing if like if that's the approach that everyone took. And unfortunately though, I'm an optimist. You know what? I'm going to say it'll happen. Maybe.
And I've been the same way. I've been a very optimistic through the course of my life. And it's like, again, through all the injuries, it's like, hey, there's something to be learned here. There's a positive situation, this negative, this negative outlook. And I think I think there needs to be more of that. I think it's so easy to go down the path of being negative and being pessimistic. I mean, I think that's the easiest thing to do. Obviously, we see a lot of things that are negative around us, whether it's on TV, if it's on the social media feed, wherever it may be. And I think, like you said, hey, what if, it's what if everyone, can be accountable and, worry about themselves in a positive aspect as opposed to, the negative aspect and, drown their sorrows and looking, to, self-loathe and just kind of go down into the abyss there.
Maybe this is something I learned. I'm going back to hockey. I got to say there are tons of lessons you obviously took from football along your journey. And for me, a lot of lessons from hockey. And I remember I was a goalie. And if someone scored on me, I remember I'd look, I'd be like, oh, this isn't good. Everyone's booing. And then you take a second, kind of replay it in your head. Then you got to move on. And so I've always tried to take that in everyday life where if something happens to not spend too much time, just dwelling on whatever happened, but to kind of take it. And again, I'm not great at it. I'm not perfect at this. I have my moments, but okay, what can I learn from this and then move forward, and not look back again.
You sound like a DB. You got to have a short-term memory out there.
Dude, it's the truth because, if I'm still, if you're still thinking about a pass that Peyton Manning threw and you're like, oh no, I wasn't in the right positioning for that. And I'm thinking about on that one time or what could I have done? Or, you spend too much time, 5 more touchdowns or 5 more goals.
Yeah.
They're going to come
about. Yeah. You have to have that short-term memory. You have to be able to move forward and progress forward. And I think, like you said, I think it's the same thing in life, right? I think it's, can dwell on the negative choices that you made. You already made the choices. You have to be accountable for those actions. And I think, being able to take that step back, I think that's what's been, I think a positive out of the situation of COVID taking place. And it's like, oh, what's a positive taking COVID? But I think it allowed us to be able to take a step back. I think it allowed us to be able to reassess some things and get back in touch with ourselves. And, we constantly live life just go. And we don't take that time to worry about our mental health, worry about our physical health, worry about the things that we're passionate and care about loved ones. We're constantly thinking about ourselves and, in a different type of manner. And I think, that kind of allowed us to be able to take that step back in some regrets to be able to, hopefully grow in some aspect.
Yeah. The hope is that you could take something like COVID and you can kind of think back and change your perspective because we're not here forever. I think one of my guests, Joe Hawley, he was an offensive lineman. He said the only constant is I think it's impermanence. It was something along the lines of that. And I don't know if it's exactly, I could be totally botching this, but it made a lot of sense because we don't have an infinite amount of time here. And of course it's easy to get lost in the social media scrolling or, whatever's going on. But it's important if you can take a step back, practice mindfulness and gratitude and really get in tune with yourself and be self-aware. I think that's where you live a fulfilled life, but it's getting in that pocket and realizing you're not always going to be in that space. And when you're not, it's okay.
And it's, human beings are, very resourceful. We have persevered through a lot and we're survivors. And that's the thing that we have to realize and understand that, this is not our first rodeo, from a historical context. This may be our first rodeo living here and going through something such like this, but in reality, this is not our first rodeo. It's not going to wipe us all out. And so it's, that's something that we have to also put in perspective as well, because we are stronger than we give credit ourselves to, right? Again, it goes back to that, our mental capacity limiting, what and who we really are as human beings. And I think that's where we have to get back to, which there's so much to have learned in these past couple of years. And as we continue to move forward is that, we are resilient, we're strong, we are able to persevere, and we are able to survive. And we also have the ability to maximize our full potential to be better than we once were. And I think that's, that's something that we have to always keep in mind. And I think this goes back to us being optimistic and positive, right? Because it's so easy the adverse of that. It's like, no, we're all gonna die, and it's like, well, we are all gonna die. That's a given fact. This is very true. We start dying once we come out the womb, and so it's that's already a given fact. But I don't think we need to live our life in fear because of the unknown. Again, that's where being able to educate ourselves, being able to live through our experiences, and ultimately having that optimism and that positivity that, this will come and go, as so as all these other diseases that have been around for the course of the last thousands of years that human civilization has persevered through.
That's well said. I mean, isn't life crazy, dude? It's like we're growing up and, we're eating goldfish and we're like, oh, like this is easy, right? You go to school, you eat your goldfish, your fruit roll-ups, and you're hanging out. And life is a trip, but it's also a beautiful thing as well. And it's a really amazing journey too, when you're, again, going back to what we talked about, because we dove in kind of early on the podcast, just being aware and being open and listening to other people. I mean, it makes it a better and a smoother ride. Of course, there are bumps along the way, but that's life. It's how do you navigate those, and what are you going to do? And sometimes with the short memory, sometimes it takes a little bit more time. If you lose somebody close to you, it's going to take more than just a minute to kind of recoup. But I think the important thing is to look back and reflect fondly and to take that with you moving forward. And when you have a bad day, it's okay.
Yep. It's all a matter of perspective, right? It always comes back down to a matter of perspective. And I think our perspective is expanding, it's widening. I think, the use of social media and the internet has made the world, smaller. And so we're able to pierce the veil through a lot of different situations. And obviously, everyone has an opinion, and everyone's opinion, wants to be heard. And it's, it's a very interesting time that we're living in right now, on a broad scale. And it's I think we also need to just remember, where we live, the perspective of that, and not getting too enamored in something, or a situation or a country, state, or whatever that we don't have any foundation in, and we don't know their culture and don't have an understanding of that situation. And I think that's, again, it's just respecting cultures, respecting people, first and foremost. And I think it's just better educating ourselves, and utilizing our critical thinking, which we need to do more of.
I'm with that 150%, my friend. Last thing I want to ask you, Walter, when you hear "be like water," what comes to mind?
Oh, be like water, little Bruce Lee, huh? Be like water is just being able to adapt. It's being able to not get caught in one confinement, a way of being. I think it's allowing you to, again, going back to what we've been, the kind of the center of what our conversation has been, of being able to be adaptable, to be able to live, to listen, to be able to sit back and have an understanding, or not an understanding because you don't know something. And I think it's being open to that situation and not just being closed off of like, oh, I'm a square and I can't fit into this other shape here. And it's like, well, be like water. You can go mold yourself and be into that other shape if you allow yourself to. And I think it comes back to the mental capacity of the want to, and not having that cognitive dissonance of just closing ourselves out to whatever is being presented to us.
Walter Thurmond, I appreciate you taking the time. Super Bowl champ, member of Legion of Boom, doing amazing things away from the game of football. How can people get in touch with you? And if you can, tell us the links to some of your projects and some of your philanthropic work as well.
Okay, yeah. UnitedChampionsForChange.org is the philanthropic site there. You can reach me on Twitter as WaltTherm3, and then Instagram is KingWalt6. And so, yeah, just looking to make a change, looking to make it different.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Jay. I really enjoyed the conversation and your perspective, man. Really, really appreciate the time.
No, thank you.